As you may have seen discussed on this channel in the past, LAX has spent years upgrading and modernizing the airport. Most terminals have been or are getting refreshed, some new concourses are still under construction, and the crowning jewel of it all is the People Mover, its connected metro station and off-site airport access areas, and consolidated rental car facilities. Unfortunately, the People Mover, despite being originally scheduled to open in 2023, has now been delayed again to the summer of 2026, which we'll come back to in a bit. The final giant LAX projects that have not yet begun, however, are the new Concourse 0, the new Terminal 9, and the massive rework of all of the roadways leading into LAX, with the construction of one of the most dizzying spaghettis seen on this side of a toddler mashing buttons in city skylines. One of these three projects, you'll see, is not like the others. I spent considerable time in my now dated LAX video discussing how Concourse 0 and Terminal 9 would catalyze a reorganization of the airport into zones for the major airline alliances, allowing for much easier connections. Sort of the grand endgame for LAX, with its last bit of real available space for new gates without completely reorganizing the way the airport works. Well, since then, things have changed. LAX's forecast of its future passenger traffic has dropped considerably, no longer necessitating the two new terminals, and they've been scrapped. That's right, Concourse 0 and Terminal 9, which would have by now been virtually impossible to complete before the Olympics anyway, are not moving forward, and LAX is instead shifting focus to improving its current facilities. But what about that third major not yet started project, the roadway spaghetti? I mean, the biggest reason this even exists as a project is because Concourse 0 necessitated demolishing a major airport access point in Skyway, which is no longer happening, and to add access to a new Terminal 9 that would be very tricky with the current road setup, which is no longer happening. So, I mean, surely they're canceling this for no longer being relevant, right? Nope, they're continuing to move forward with it, truly just because. Now focusing on the potential benefit of getting some cars off of Sepulveda and removing pedestrian and traffic conflicts and creating a free-flowing system, which is code for making it significantly harder to be a pedestrian in this area by prioritizing vehicles by turning this entire 6-block area into a mess of essentially freeway ramps. Cool. Let's go down the list of why this is such a bad idea. And to be clear, this was never a good idea. It was an extremely convoluted solution of last resort, cobbled together in an attempt to allow the new terminals to come online, a condition that no longer exists. It's kind of like learning that your cancer went into remission on its own and choosing to still do chemo just for the fun of it. So, reason number one this is a bad idea. We now have, or will have, extremely viable and preferable alternative methods to access the airport. When the People Mover finally comes online, the whole point is that people won't have to access the horseshoe. They can be dropped off at the ITF or arrive on the metro, plus rideshare and rental car returners will also be arriving via the People Mover. There's no need to change access to the horseshoe because literally the entire point of the multi-billion-dollar project is to deprioritize the horseshoe in the first place and free us from its tyrannical grip. 2. This will actually increase congestion in the area. By admission of their own study. Yes, you heard that right. It will actually accomplish the exact opposite of what they want, but they are still moving forward with it. There are, and I directly quote, no feasible mitigation measures to directly address the induced VMT impact. As such, induced VMT would be a significant and unavoidable impact. Yes, that is induced demand, rearing its ugly head again. Remember when we spent a fortune and suffered years of construction to widen the 405 and all it did was make traffic worse? Why do American planners constantly ignore induced demand when it is an observable, objective reality? It's getting to be insane. This will make traffic here worse for the people who still choose to drive to the airport, to say nothing of the poor souls that live around here. And the process of actually building it? Well, point 3. This can't even get done before the Olympics, and especially not before the World Cup, which now the People Mover probably won't be ready for either. So we're going to be tearing up the entire area, making it a nightmare to navigate, and almost certainly creating even worse gridlock than already exists for years during major events, one of which won't even have the viable alternative to this gridlock online yet. And the parts they claim they can get done before the Olympics, well, let's just say that with the People Mover delayed 3 years past its own open date, and counting, Do we expect LAX management's competence to stick to that extremely tight timeline? Slip even just a little bit, and it's total disaster, and let me use my powers of foresight to tell you, it's gonna slip. Point 4. The horseshoe itself can't be further widened, so this actually creates a traffic pinch point with the horseshoe, contributing to the previous problems. Point 5. This will cost $500 million. Wait. $500 million so far. We have seen what cost escalations on the People Mover have looked like. LAX and the contractor have been in a protracted battle over costs and delays that has increased the People Mover budget by $880 million. That's almost a $1 billion budget increase on top of its original $1.9 billion budget for a f***ing air train. And that doesn't even include the cost of the metro station. Plus, that contractor is getting another $3 billion to operate this thing for 30 years. No one, from LAX to the contractors, comes out of this debacle smelling like roses, to put it mildly. LA World Airports has long been a bit of a shit show, and handing them yet another $500 million to start seems like, well, kind of an insane waste of money that we could put to way better use elsewhere. Point 6. Not that the people in charge of this project really care, but this is quite the emissions increasing project in an era when California and LA are supposedly trying to reduce emissions. So maybe we don't do this. Finally, point 7. Just f***ing look at this thing. This is a bit subjective, but how does this design make sense to anyone? This will probably result in even more traffic than the study predicts because the people looping around the endless labyrinth trying to figure out where the hell they're supposed to go. It triggers for me a vivid memory of when I was doing college visits with my family, looking at some places in New York City, and we stayed at a Newark Airport hotel despite driving there, because it was cheaper to stay there and take the train into the city than stay in Manhattan. But every single time we tried to get back to the hotel, which was on a frontage road in the middle of an absolutely ludicrous mess of freeway ramps, it must have been one of these guys or one of these guys, it ended up with my dad looping the car around from freeway to freeway, slowly losing his mind, trying to figure out how to find a ramp that would actually get us back there. It took seriously like half an hour trying to figure out how to reach the hotel when it was within view every single time. It is this beautiful experience that we're going to bring to the people of Los Angeles and travelers without count every time they decide it's a good idea to drive to the airport. Yes, we are exporting a New Jersey experience to California, exactly what we all want. And no one is out here claiming that what Westchester really needs is an infusion of road-raged drivers stuck in an M.C. Escher painting out of civil design hell. The alternative is we can just not do this. Like, seriously, just don't. It's a zombie project carried forward solely by inertia by an airport going through the motions for absolutely no reason. Literally, the only humans on Earth excited about this are the companies that will get the contract and probably drag it out with a decade of change orders, holding LA World Airports and all of us hostage in construction hell while they wring every last dollar out of us. And literally, as I'm finishing this, I'm learning that $604 million is actually just phase 1, and the whole project cost, depending on the source, is either 1.5 or 2.2 billion. Imagine all the things LAX could spend that money on, from an EV flyaway fleet with onboard Wi-Fi, to more locations on 10-minute headways, to increase frequency of the CK trains to the LAX metro station, to improving pedestrian and bike access instead of stunting it. Hell, to even chip in to get Sepulveda Phase 2 to the airport. 2.2 billion would go a long way. Or, here's a thought, we could take a cue from New York's wildly successful program and implement congestion pricing in the horseshoe to reduce traffic now that there's viable alternatives, and use that revenue to fund all of those ideas. It's hard to think of a use that's not better than this. The effort to stop this is coordinated from the site laxgridlock.com, so go there to see what actions you can take to nip this shit in the bud. Following my highlight of LA Taco a few weeks ago in the South Bay video, this video's local organization to support in lieu of a Patreon is also a local news source, and in this case a very relevant one. Alyssa Walker's Torched newsletter covering the 2028 Olympics and all related matters. Alyssa Walker is one of LA's absolute best transit reporters, and she's doing amazing work with Torched. You won't find a better source that will hold the city to account on issues like this, and I highly recommend you sign up.